So here we start with the level 3 of respiration. Question 1. Residual air in the rabbit is found in option A nostrils, option B trachea, option C bronchus, and option D alveoli. The answer to this question is quite straightforward, which is option D alveoli. Question 2 says larynx is found in option A both frog and rabbit, option B neither frog nor rabbit, option C frog but not in rabbit, option D rabbit but not in frog. The answer to this question is option B, as neither frog nor rabbit show presence of larynx. However, in human beings we do have the larynx, which is also known as the sound box. Question number 3 is there is a membrane covering the lungs called option A peritoneum, option B pleura, option C pericardium, and option D dura mater. Each lung is enclosed in two membranes called the pleurae. The outer covering is adhered to the chest wall and diaphragm and is called the parietal pleura, and the inner covering membrane which closely covers the lung is called the visceral pleura. So the option is pleura. There are two layers, the outer being parietal pleura and the inner being visceral pleura. The next question is, what is true about hemoglobin? Option A, it is a dipeptide and present in red blood corpuscles in bloodworm. Option B, it is present in the dissolved state in blood plasma in earthworm. Option C, it is a dipeptide in mammals and localized in red blood corpuscles. Option D, it is present in dissolved state plasma in blood plasma in scorpions. So the answer to this question is option C, as we see the presence of hemoglobin in mammals like human beings. Also, it is true that the hemoglobin is a dipeptide. Also, we know that hemoglobin is found in the red blood corpuscles to form a complex known as oxyhemoglobin with oxygen, which facilitates the transport of oxygen in the body through the blood. So the answer to this question is option C. Our next question is, oxyhemoglobin dissociates into oxygen and deoxyhemoglobin at option A low O2 pressure in tissue, option B high O2 pressure in tissue, option C equal O2 pressure inside and outside tissue, option D all times irrespective of O2 pressure. So your more active tissue has much lower PO2, therefore much more oxygen is released from oxyhemoglobin in the active state. So the answer to this question is low O2 pressure in the tissue, because oxyhemoglobin dissociates into oxygen and deoxyhemoglobin under this condition. Our next question is, in lungs the air is separated from the venous blood through option A squamous epithelium plus endothelium of blood vessel, option B squamous epithelium plus tunica media blood vessel, option C transitional epithelium plus tunica external blood vessel, option D none of these. The answer to this question is quite straightforward, which is squamous epithelium plus endothelium of blood vessel. The next question is, similarity between the trachea of cockroach and rabbit is that option A both are paired and branched, option B ciliated epithelium is present in both, option C walls of both cannot be deformed, option D in both head originates from pharynx. Here we know that the walls of trachea in cockroach as well as in a rabbit are not deformable, and therefore the correct answer to this question is option C, walls of both cannot be deformed. The next question says, bulk of carbon dioxide released from body tissues into the blood is present as option A 70% carbaminohemoglobin and 30% is bicarbonate, option B carbaminohemoglobin in RBCs, option C bicarbonate in blood plasma in RBCs, and option D free CO2 in blood plasma. The answer to this question is option C, which is a straightforward answer. bicarbonate in blood plasma and red blood corpuscles. Next question is, the breakdown product of hemoglobin is called as option A, iron, option B, bilirubin, option C, hemocyanin, and option D, scatal. Bilirubin is an orange pigment that is one of the end product of hemoglobin breakdown in the hepatocyte and is excreted as a waste material in bile. Iron is a metal, while hemocyanin and scatal are not a product of hemoglobin breakdown. So the answer to this question is option B. The next question is, the major fraction of CO2 released during cellular respiration is transported by the blood to the lung capillaries. Options are A, in combination with hemoglobin, B, as free CO2, C, as carbonic acid or H2CO3, D, in the form of bicarbonate ions. D is the answer to this question, as the major fraction of CO2 released is transported in the form of bicarbonate ions and not as free CO2 or as carbonic acid, or not even in combination with hemoglobin, as hemoglobin is combined with oxygen to form oxyhemoglobin. So the answer to this question is in the form of bicarbonate ions. The next question is, the respiratory center in brain which controls inspiration and expiration is situated in option A, medulla oblongata, option B, cerebellum, option C, hypothalamus, and option D, pericardium. Breathing is controlled by pneumotaxic and apneustic centers in pons varolii and expiratory and inspiratory centers in medulla oblongata. So the answer to this question is medulla oblongata. Which of the following conditions is responsible for increases in ventilation rate of lungs? Option A, increase of CO2 content in inhaled air. Option B, increase of CO2 content in exhaled air. Option C, decrease of O2 content in inhaled air. Option D, decrease of O2 content in exhaled air. The answer to this question is increase of CO2 content in inhaled air, because it is responsible for increase in ventilation rate of the lungs, as the requirement of oxygen increases to maintain a balance between the PCO2 and the PO2 levels, that is the partial CO2 and the partial O2 layers. So the answer is A. Rate of breathing is controlled by option A, the amount of freely available oxygen, option B, carbon dioxide, option C, muscular function of the body, and option D, stress. So here the most suitable option is carbon dioxide, as the concentration of carbon dioxide or the partial carbon dioxide content in the blood is what is responsible, in the body is what is responsible to control breathing. Therefore the answer is carbon dioxide. Substances whose RQ is less than 1 is option A, carbohydrate, option B, protein, option C, organic acid, and option D, all of the above. The answer to this question is protein, because the amount of CO2 released is less than absorbed O2. Therefore the value of RQ, which is CO2 by O2, is less than unity in this case. So the answer is option B. Yes. Increased asthmatic attacks in certain seasons are related to option A, hot and humid environment, option B, eating fruits preserved in tin containers, option C, inhalation of seasonal pollen grains, option D, low temperature. The answer to this question is inhalation of seasonal pollens, because plants release pollen grains in a fixed time, and it is generally between March to April or between August to September, and these are responsible for asthmatic attacks or the increase in number of attacks in these seasons. The next question is, the blue baby syndrome results from option A, excess of dissolved oxygen, option B, excess of TDS, option C, excess of chloride, and option D, methemoglobin. The answer to this question is quite straightforward, which is option D, methemoglobin. Hemoglobin is having maximum affinity with option A, CO2, option B, CO, option C, O2, and option D, NH3. The answer to this question is oxygen. And this property of hemoglobin is important in the control of respiratory system in humans, as hemoglobin combines with oxygen to form oxyhemoglobin, and one molecule combines with 4 molecules of O2 to facilitate the process.
18. Inspiration occurs when there is negative pressure in the lungs with respect to the atmospheric pressure. This negative pressure is achieved when option A. Intrapulmonary pressure is less than atmospheric pressure. Option B. Intrapulmonary pressure is greater than atmospheric pressure. Option C. Intrapulmonary pressure is equal to atmospheric pressure. Option D. Intrapleural pressure becomes more than the interairway pressure. Now, as we know that in this question, the negative pressure is achieved when intrapulmonary pressure is less than atmospheric pressure, because pressure gradient between the lungs and the atmosphere, pressure gradient between lungs and atmosphere, the air moves into and out of the lungs. The air will move into and out of the lungs. Inspiration occurs if the pressure within the lungs, that is intrapulmonary pressure, is less than the atmospheric pressure. That is, there is negative pressure in the lungs with respect to atmospheric pressure. There is negative pressure in lungs with respect to atmospheric pressure. So option A, intrapulmonary pressure is less than atmospheric pressure, is the correct answer.
Next question is buccopharyngeal respiration in frog. Option A is increased when nostrils in frog. Option B stops when there is pulmonary respiration. Option C is increased when it is catching fly. Option D stops when mouth is opened. The answer to this question is option D. It stops when mouth is opened, because this portion or this process occurs through the nose and mouth and gullet, and are kept closed during the process. Our next question is, which one of the following is correct statement for respiration in humans? Option A, cigarette smoking may lead to inflammation of bronchi. Option B, neural signals from pneumotoxic center in pons region of brain can increase the duration of inspiration. Option C, workers in grinding and stone breaking industry may suffer from lung fibrosis. Option D, about 90% of carbon dioxide or CO2 is carried by hemoglobin as carbaminohemoglobin. The correct answer to this question is option A, because cigarette smoking can lead to inflammation of bronchi.